Greetings, greetings, Galaxy family. Sista Shanice in the house. Rising up, all of our African men out there who believe in elevating, uplifting, supporting, assisting, being there for their African queens. So they say this is International Women's Month, but for us, every day is Women's Day. So I want to rise up all of our black queens, all of our beautiful black women out there who are locked into the Big G Galaxy Afiwi, the only de-brainwashing station. Yes, we know that often we as women, we're underestimated, undervalued, underrated, highly criticized, sometimes even abused by our own men, but the reality is that we as women are the soul of our nation. We are the backbone of our nation. And nowhere is that more evident than here on the continent itself. You know, when I look out and I see the African women and the role that they play here in society, it's absolutely phenomenal. You know, as I've mentioned before, and those of you who are regular listeners to the Big G, you would have heard me talk about this before, but yes, I see the African women out there from 4, 5 in the morning, getting up to go and do their farming. And sometimes they'll have their babies on their back as they're preparing the soil or turning or tilling the soil or sowing their seeds, whatever it is they're out there doing, they're preparing for that harvest, not just for themselves, but for their family. Because, you know, here on the continent, that's what it's all about, the family. So you have the women who get up early in the morning, they go out to the farm, and then they'll return home in time to prepare breakfast for the children, for the husband, and for the family members. And once they've fed the family, they'll make sure that the children are ready for school. They'll take the children to school, and then they'll come back, and with the produces that they've taken from the farm, they will go to the market with those produces, and they will walk up and down for the whole day if necessary until they've sold enough. So they've got enough money to buy what's needed for the household for the evening meal that evening. And yes, it is very much like that. So when we talk about a lot of African people on the continent working from hand to mouth, and in Jamaica as well, it's about earning money that day so that they can feed themselves that evening. And so, you know, the women are out there and they're selling, you know, their peanuts or their bananas or whatever it is they've farmed, their tomatoes, their onions, their callaloo, they're out there selling it on their little market stall patch that they've got. Or, you know, they're going to the sites where the fishermen are and they're getting some fish and they're scaling it for money, or they take some fish and go and sell it in the market. But it's all about raising enough funds so that they can provide for their family. And they go back home, and after preparing that meal for their family and feeling contented that everyone has even eaten before they've eaten. Once everybody's eaten, sometimes we might see our mum or our dad scraping the pot bottom, and we think them like the pot bottom, but no, I just that leave, and them satisfied with the pot bottom to know so that they fed their children first. And then, you know, after they've checked that their children are doing their homework, and or they'll sing to them their ABC and their times table or whatever, they feel that they want to instill in their children before they prepare them for bed. And then, with my mother, when we're all sleeping now, we would hear the sewing machine, all the extra work that she's doing, sewing the curtains, sewing and tailoring or darning or whatever she's doing to earn that extra money. Out here, those women may be back on the road again, selling, any produces that they were unable to sell during the day. Some out until like 1 a.m. on the stalls before they go back home for their little rest and their day starts again. And, often with their children on their back and their big basket on their head. I tell you, we've got to rise up the women. And so, when our men put together music, and songs that are elevating us as women, we have to thank them so, so much, because, it's a beautiful, beautiful music to listen to when our men, as I said, are celebrating their African women. Rise up, Brother Franklyn. Welcome to the Big G Galaxy Afiwi, the only de-brainwashing station.
I like that. Only brain. Yeah, fantastic.
The only de-brainwashing station, here to rise up a nation and to educate the next generation. And so it's a privilege and an honor, my brother, to have you on the show to contribute towards the important works that we're all doing, and you're certainly doing during these times. I'm well, thank you, my brother. And how are you?
I'm fantastic. As long as I'm able to speak to my people, I'm always fantastic.
Brilliant.
I sincerely feel that there is no subject more pressing for us than this one, because this is about the liberation of our minds. And so many of us have normalized our condition. We don't address it. We go normalizing it. And the problem we face is that there are Black people that have never read literature that wasn't written by a white person, that never heard a news report that wasn't produced by a white person, that never heard statistics that weren't complied by whites, that never watched a movie in which a white person didn't have final say over the script, that never received an education where whites didn't write the history. The white society have exploited this monopoly over information to instill a value system into the minds of Black people that serve the system of white supremacy. It is literally mental slavery. And as a result of this, there are more Africans enslaved by whites today than at any time before in history. But the problem is most of us don't know it. Those of us who do not critically think, that do not question the validity of all information we receive from white sources, don't realize how we are being socialized. And this, even though many of us have never heard the term socialized before, it's actually a common practice throughout history. Our mindset, we see the symptoms among our people. We see the self-loathing. We see the negative generalizations. We also see our people say things like, "Oh, why you can't be like white people?" We tell our kids, "Why you can't be like white kids?" Or when the phone rings, talk white. Or we see our people talking to a white person and they sit up straight when talking to a white person. Or the fact that a Black person finds it easier to attack another Black person than it is to do a white person. This is all by design. It's never coincidental whenever the oppressed thinks and behaves in ways that are beneficial to the dominant society. It's always because the dominant, the oppressive society has socialized the minds of the oppressed. And we will never overcome it unless we acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge it. I greatly believe in a people's ability to overcome anything when given the proper information. So my mission is to teach my people the proper and true information. Because white oppressive forces have spread so much propaganda into our communities, propaganda that are designed to prevent us from gaining a clear, concise understanding of our condition and our plight. And the reason they did this, because If we are not able to get a clear understanding of our condition and plight, then all remedies that stem from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. So when we speak, we come together to liberate ourselves. We have other people calling in. They believe that our plight is connected to a Bible that was brutally forced upon our ancestors and passed down to us. That ideology is really a stupid one. And it's just a fact. The ideology that we are suffering from a slave syndrome, that's an ignorant premise, because that's not how brainwashing of people works down generational lines. True brainwashing is a system that's being constantly reapplied upon the mind. If not, it will weaken with each new generation. Every place where the white man's controlling your education, he's controlling our media, he's controlling the narrative we hear, we are programmed. Are you hearing me? Yes, many of our people have never heard the term social scientists, never.
Mhm.
We've been conditioned. We think of racism, we think of the Klansmen, we think of the skinhead, but the greatest attack against us are the white social scientists. There are three ways to effectively socialize the human mind. That's by what we're taught, what we see, and by what we hear. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the media images we see, and the societal narratives we hear, this allows them to socialize our minds without realizing it. I'll give you an example that we've all experienced. So often you will hear a black person insist that most of our slave ancestors were fairly sold away to the white man. This narrative benefits the white society. It places the blame more greatly on Africans, on the wretchedness of Africans than the white man. And when you see millions of black people walking around with this ideology, it was indoctrinated in their minds through a whitewashed education. We're often not able to even see the white man as we accurately should see him, because we're always bombarded with messages. Even in the movies we watch, when we think we're being entertained, we're being indoctrinated with thoughts where we feel favorable. We're being conditioned to respect and admire whites and think less of ourselves. Now, this particular system, I know we always say dates back to slavery. No, but not quite. The system that we're under now was developed in 1968. In 1968, the African American civil rights movement was unprecedented. African Americans confront racism in America on every front. Civil disobedience, militant meetings, and with African Americans fighting for equality in America's highest Supreme Courts. So they sent social scientists. The Kerner Commission sent social scientists to study the reason for the unprecedented black protests. And what they formulated is a system we're under now. And here's what they determined. They determined that the unprecedented black protests was the result of an elevated and unifying collective black self-esteem brought on by the emergence of the Black Pride movement. So it was largely determined that you can suppress black rebellion by keeping our self-esteem low, our collective self-esteem low. So this is why every time we look around, we're getting negative information about ourselves. Secondly, thing they realized, they also learned that while the white oppressors, through their weaponry advantage of guns and cannons, were able to invade and enslave the Africans, they're not able to sustain peace and destiny with the Africans unless the Africans' minds are socialized. The reason is because whenever people are oppressed for a long term, their collective aggressions against the oppressive society will continue to grow until acts of rebellion becomes inevitable. This is an inherent response within the human psyche when under oppression. So the only way to prevent these pending acts of rebellion is by shifting the collective aggressions of the oppressed away from the oppressive society and redirected toward themselves. This is why everywhere you go, like whether you're in the UK, Canada, or America, the black population is always being bombarded with black on black crime statistics. They keep talking about black on black crime, black on black violence. That's actually a psychological warfare campaign. It's designed to it's designed to shift our aggression against ourselves, to convince us that we are our own worst enemies. In fact, when I was in the military and we were training in psychological warfare, they even taught that. They said the most effective method for subduing and controlling a large population without actually fighting them is by misleading them to believe that their core problem is an internalized one. This shifts their collective aggression from their true enemies and redirect it against themselves. This is what's happening to us. And so many of us don't understand the true relationship, the true underlying relationship that still exists between black people and white society. Here is the hidden reality. There is an immense fear of black retribution that exists among those white nations that have brutalized Africans and exploited Africa for centuries. There's also although white governments profess equality for all their citizens, at their core, they are unrelentingly committed to the preservation of their nationwide dominance. This unrelenting commitment to preserving white dominance and this fear of black retribution resulted in white governments using psychological warfare against black people. We are being bombarded with propaganda. An example I'm sure you experienced. If you pay attention, for example, you will notice that every study result that we hear that makes a comparison between blacks and whites, the study results favors whites. Favors white, regardless of what it is. This propaganda is being designed to instill the belief of white superiority into our subconscious mind. This is also why even they totally change history. If you pay attention in your white dominant society, you'll notice that all generalizations made about white people are positive, and all generalizations made about black people are negative. When you keep doing this, they're able to instill a value system in our minds that benefits white society.